Get happy.
When I'm living without hope,
When I'm living without hope,
when my heart is hurt and my mind
I
confused,
hear you calling me.
I hear you
Calling me.
when I'm living on the ropes,
When I'm living on the ropes,
going down for the third
I
time.
hear you calling me.
I hear you
Calling me.
You say, why be afraid of false surge and wait? They're just impermanent states of mind. And at once I'm free of false identity because the master calls from afar. I hear you calling me, calling me. I hear you calling me, calling me.
There is a true unbinding, a joy to be received.
When stainless vision rises and we stand undeceived,
Embracing circumstances, our hearts will be relieved.
this is the end of suffering. We offer homage to His Holiness Dorje Buddha III because of His infinite patience and compassion. For over 10 years, He has waited for us to be ready for these supreme teachings. And although throngs of thousands wait to see Him, He teaches us all. Calling me, calling me, calling me, calling me. If you want to be saved,
If you want to be saved
from your self-destructive ways, listen to the Master.
calling,
Open to the Master.
calling,
Calling, calling,
Open to the
Master,
calling, calling,
calling,
to the
calling,
master.
calling, calling.
Okay, that didn't help me a lot. I think, oh, baby, it did. Mm. I'd like to share something that Buddhadasa talked about. You know, Buddhadasa was a very famous Theravada bhikkhu. And he said that there are three wishes which are to be realized by every Buddhadasa. Dasa means slave, slave of the Buddha. And don't get offended by that word slave. I'm not offended by it. And there's something in my line that knows something about slavery. So y'all don't get offended by that. But that slave means a total allegiance to, you know. And it said that the one main wish is try to get to the heart of one's own religion. Get to the heart of what you believe. Not study it, but get to the heart of it so that you can actually live it and walk it out. He said to do this, you have to try to assist in the withdrawal of from the power of materialism and try to achieve mutual understanding. And so that's the whole purpose of what we look for or searching for within our dharmic walk or our walk of Buddhism. And it's becoming difficult for me to talk about Buddhism, you know, as a path or as a way of life or as a religion because my sense of differentiation is receding. Uh, it was a separate kind of language and a separate kind of life, but now it's folding into, thanks to Buddha Master, the real question. And it's like, what is a human being? Why are we here? How do we, to just understand the nature of the universe and to understand ourselves? I mean, that's it. We don't have to call it anything else. It's answering our own questions. And this is a path or a way by which we get to the root of our inquiry, the root of our confusion, the root of our not knowing, and come to know our to know ourselves, to know our original nature, to know. I had a 2-year-old and my granddaughter, and I was trying to teach her something, and she didn't want me to teach her. You know, she was in the process of working out something for herself. And I got all involved in that, you know, because I'm going to show her how to do that. And it was just a simple thing of like tying the shoe. And she said, "No, Grandma, by myself." You know, she wanted to figure out how to tie this shoestring by herself. And so I learned a lot from that. Well, maybe I didn't learn as much as I thought. I'm a teacher, right? Um, but there comes a time in our life where we have to say, by myself. Yeah, I need to figure this out by myself, for myself, from my perspective, not from your view, teacher, not from your view, but from my own view. And that's where we start to get lost if our whole journey has been based on study and learning as opposed to experiencing and figure out what just happened. What did I just experience? What does it mean? How do I use this? And so that's how we are in our practice. And when the Dharma came to the United States, I won't even just say to the US, I'm just talking about in these several hundred years that the Dharma has been shared in the way that we have all of our writings and all of our books, we have missed something. For instance, if I asked what was the predominant meditation practice in this country, what would you say? Mhm. And another name for that is Vipassana. Well, I'll tell you, Vipassana is not in the Sutta Pitaka. It doesn't exist in there at all. It's a method that was developed for people who had difficulty developing insight naturally. And so some teachers said, well, you know, I'll come up with a method by which I can help them to learn. So if one thinks that Vipassana was what the Buddha taught, I'd like for you to show me somewhere. It's not in there. It came from later teachers. He taught insight by the natural method of inquiry, and the inquiry had to be based on something. It had to be based on how we walked out our life. So we're looking at natural states of awareness, inner awareness that lead to the full insight into the world and what's happening in the world. And that's the difference between people who are trying to talk about what the book said and what's naturally arising in one to know how to handle every circumstance that they come up against in their daily life. That's the difference between getting so caught up in the theoretical understanding, or we a lot of times we use the word uh, intelligence, and I'm speaking about ordinary intelligence. And that's okay because you need to know that. You need to know how to cross the street. You're not going to find it in the Dharma. You know, so there are things that we need to just conventionally move about in the world. But when we try to apply those same things to spiritual matters, then we're going to be lost because we don't have the direct experience that brings the knowing. Only the direct experience brings the knowing. And that's why I tell someone has, no matter how many books they study, they can recite it by rote or whatever, but they don't have the wisdom because that's only unlocked through the direct experience. Now, one of the problems in cultivating wisdom is challenge. We have to be challenged, if there's something we don't know and something that we want to know, there is a challenge posed there, because we're not going to be able to operate out of our ordinary, um, we're not going to be able to operate out of the memory that we already have of how to do things, why to do things, when to do things, where to do things, who to do it from. If we rely on memory that we read it in a book and try to execute it, that's the mind of the person that wrote the book. But what does my mind say? I have to experience and walk out the machinations of my own mind. And that means that sometimes my mind says da da, and when I walk that out, I find like that wasn't a good idea. You know, I maybe there's another way. What was I really feeling? Well, the book said on page 9 that this is how we should think, but I'm not thinking that way. So if I'm not thinking that way, I'm not going to be able to walk that out. I'm only going to be able to walk out how I really think. And then reflect on how well that worked for me. Did I did I get my right? Did I feel vindicated when I said what I said? Did I feel satisfied when I did what I did? And I said, no, I really didn't. Then I come to know something about doing it that way or saying it that way is not going to bring me the satisfaction I thought it was going to bring me. And so I need to look for another way. And so we walk out, this one I'll keep, that one, toss that out. This I'll keep, toss that out. And when we finish and condense it down, we have the things that bring us peace, that bring us joy, that bring us satisfaction, that bring us a sense of connection. And we keep those things and we keep doing those things and we keep thinking about those things. And when we do, that's how we begin to shift and we begin to change. But if we're only trying to work from the book says, the book is just to give an idea. You know, the book might not even give a good idea. Maybe everything you read in the whole book is like means nothing to you, nothing for you. You know, and so we have to take this chance on ourselves that we have the capacity to truly know. We can know the nature of things. We can really penetrate experience. And that's how we grow and that's how we develop. It's not from knowing your experience, but from knowing my own experience. A lot of times I tell stories here about things happening in my life. But it's not for you to try to duplicate whatever I'm talking about. You know, it's to trigger you that you might think about something happening in your own life and how you are processing that, how you're working with that, how you're shifting and out picturing so that what you have out here corresponds with whatever brings you a certain level of peace and joy and harmony inside. And when we get to that place, then there's no outer and inner. You see, up until that time, there is outer and there is inner. And so many teachers came up with many different methods to help many different students who were struggling with many different things. And we call that loosely or broadly the Dharma. But it doesn't mean that everything is for everybody. And it doesn't mean that we have to know all 84,000 teachings. But if we can just learn a few, we can learn what is meaningful for us and what is not. And just penetrate those. It's not from a surface level, but to go deep in those. We can shift our whole way of knowing and walking in the world. I'm undergoing a lot of trans transition right now. And some of it concerns things that I asked about that I couldn't quite find a satisfactory answer to for me. And we can be reading a paragraph from a teaching, and there's 20 of us in the room, and it causes 20 different questions to rise up, because I heard one thing in that paragraph of reading, and yet she heard something different. Her mind tripped off in a different way, and and so by the time we start to talk about it, like we're just in a jumble, like all mixed up because all minds going in all these different directions. And so sometimes we have to know how much of it we can share that's useful and how much will like trail a person off. That can become difficult to do in a room of 20 people. No, I mean, this is not easy to do at all. And so that's why teachers have come up with topics, and teachers come up with themes, and teachers come up, with systematic teachings. But in the end, the only thing that is going to save you is your unpacking of direct experience. It's the only thing. And when you have it, all you can do is share your experience. Say, it's like this. For me, it was like that. To give a person a direction in which to go, that they can begin to ponder their own experience. So that means then that when the wisdom comes, where does it come from? It's not coming from outside of us. Actually, it's coming from inside of us. And when we rely too heavily on any particular teaching, then we're going to miss the true teaching that rises up out of the heart and reveals the mystery of life to us. And when you get this, it shifts your study of the Dharma or any other, particular spiritual tradition that you're practicing in. It shifts it. And it becomes not something out here, but it becomes my story, my unraveling of the mystery of life, my unpacking of what is this thing that I call life. So right now, I'm bringing this up because I want every person this week to really think about what their question is right now about life. What is life to you? And instead of embarking upon some kind of topic that engages us, that what's that word? I'll say it entertains us, even, because this is the way that we avoid asking this question and dealing with the response that rises up. We find something to study, or we go to something that we like, or we look for something that takes our attention away from the important questions that we have to ask ourselves. And so we look for something to that the mind can attach to. I mean, actually, when we think about getting still, there's a fear of getting still. And we have to find something to engage our mind, because that could be a scary place. It can make us feel guilty about something that we don't want to own up to. It can make us have to face a situation that we don't want to face. So we look for something to soothe, or something to that we can agree with so that we can get back to a place of comfort. It has a way of taking our attention away from something we know we need to deal with, but we don't want to deal with because we don't want to change. Well, we do want to change, but we don't want to go through what it takes to change. So then I'll look for something that helps me to understand myself, how I am. And there's something about coming to understand oneself. Understand means to allow me to be like I am, that I find more intoxicating than being challenged at how I am so that I can change. The Buddha says that the way that we can make the most progress towards our happiness is to find the opposite of whatever we're thinking and whatever we're doing. I mean, on one hand, we acknowledge that we are in a state of ignorance and delusion. That's easy to say. I mean, we say that. But when it comes time to really examine that and what the opposite then would be, we don't really want to do that. We now find somewhere to go or something to enjoy so that we don't have to really face ourselves because we don't really want that confrontation. Heck, you confronting me enough. I'm going to confront myself. We don't want it. But that's why he says we have to go to these places that scare us. The minute something crops up, why we're such procrastinators is because when things crop up and we don't want to deal with them, we move our mind towards something else. And after a while, procrastination just becomes a way of life, not dealing with the issues. We don't deal with them until they get so bad, they're so big in our face that they pounce on us. Now we have to try to deal with them. But we could have taken care of matters while they were small if we were willing to challenge the way we are when we are recognizing that it's bringing unhappiness for oneself or unhappiness for others. But we're creatures of habit on this plane of existence. And so there are laws in place. Sometimes we think about patience and I don't know about you, but that's a really tough one for me. Oh, well, not so much now. But most of my life, patience was hard topic for me to approach because that's all it was, a topic. I wasn't really trying to have it, but it was hard. But if you think about it, sometimes not having patience causes chaos. It causes chaos. So we have a lot of chaos going on in the world because this is an instant generation. The faster we want things, and the more we want things, even good things, to happen right now, the more inner dissatisfaction arises and the more we throw outer things into turmoil. Everybody can see that. But to be able to discipline myself, to have the patience to allow something to emerge in the right time. Well, part of that is, suppose it doesn't happen in my lifetime. Suppose it doesn't happen. Like I want to be a part of it. So I want it to happen now, but maybe it won't happen in my lifetime. But just embracing the goodness of it when all conditions are right, when it comes into its own season, and thinking, what a beautiful thing. And instead of the selfish thinking, like, but I want to participate. Mhm. And so I'm confronted with a lot of thoughts like this, things that are going to happen in the future, but I wanted them to happen now because I want to be a part of it. I want to participate in it. And that's a kind of selfishness. So when he talks about the bodhisattva aspiration, that bodhisattva wants the good thing to come, but it wants it to come when? In its time, naturally, in its time. And then there's no grasping or clinging or craving around it. And it is truly undefiled. When we talk about defiled thoughts, we're thinking about like nasty things according to human convention. But when the Buddha talks about defiled thoughts, he's not talking about that. He just leaves that worldly chit chat with the worldly chit chat. But when he's talking about defilement, he's talking about things like this. That because I want to participate, because I want to be a part of it, because I thought of it, like, so I'm entitled to have some of the benefit of it. But that's the kind of defilement that we're talking about now on this level. You got to move with the cloud. You know, if we don't, we will miss today's lesson. Thinking about last month's lesson or last year's lesson or 10 years ago lesson. But every day, fresh, there's a new lesson. And when one begins to take uh, like stock in what's my joy for today, it's correcting something that brings me discomfort. What's my happiness for today? It's learning how to let go of something that I'm grasping around. Or, uh, and we start to find joy in what we used to call the trials of life. Now, it doesn't mean that things didn't change. Doesn't mean that, quote, trials are not still there. But what you see as a trial, I see as an opportunity to grow. I'll see that as as an opportunity to try something new, to try something different. You know, uh, I find joy in just little associations. Like just now, when I said that, I'll try something new. Came to me Smokey's song, I'll try something new. If this doesn't work, I'll try something new. I'll move the stars, and it's that kind of ease that with that kind of ease that we can approach the uh, the vicissitudes of life, our daily life. I mean, so there can be joy in every moment, or as Thich Nhat Hanh says, there can be peace in every step. And when you get a taste of this, it becomes impossible to go, excuse me, it becomes impossible to go back to former ways of thinking and former ways of being, because the liberation is so absolute and it is so complete that it doesn't push something into the background, it obliterates it and it no longer exists. Staying with the Dharma in the tough times are what give us these kinds of qualities and these kinds of propensities and these kinds of abilities. And then we find ourselves in a place that instead of responding to situations in life, the structure of appearances shift before our very eyes. Now you can read this in a book and not have a clue about what it means. But when we start making that trek, that we're no longer afraid of the things that come into our life that we don't want, that we don't like, it's only then we'll be able to enter into the sphere of liberation. You can't talk to liberation. Can't talk about liberation to someone has not been liberated from anything. But when one has passed through a barrier of opposition, when they know something about prevailing, then they understand what it is to be liberated from something. So we have this idea of Vipassana as a method of meditating, as a practice, as something that we do. And it's okay. I'm just saying that it's not the only way that one's mind becomes still. I'm not even saying that it's the best way that one's mind becomes still. I'll just say it is a way. And I brought this up because I was talking with someone and they saying, I'm going back to Vipassana. And for that person, that might be good because maybe the person is so well spoken, they could just talk out the Dharma so well, but a little more difficulty living it out. It could mean don't talk so much. Just sit. Just go through the torture of not talking. Just go through the pain of not being the brightest light bulb in the room. Maybe that's what it means for that person. But for another person, what would get them into that space where the mind will just stop is mantra recitation. Or not even mantra recitation, just chanting a sutra. So when Pannavati was dying, Elsie's teacher came to see him, and he's a Tibetan monk, and we talked, and he went in to be with him, and then he came back and he talked to me. He said, "Can you put some sutras above, your sutra book above his head?" I said, "What sutra book? I've got 1,000 sutra books. What do you mean sutra book?" And he said, "Well, and he was trying to explain with me. He said, "Never mind, I'll bring one." And so what he bought was a patient that had text in it, text that he recites, text that he reads. I said, because I could take all the books and just put a bookshelf over his head, because we were coming from two different ways of learning and studying. Because I started piling up the book. Okay, he said, put books over his head, and he said, never mind, I'll bring it. And he brought me a patient, and he loaned me his patient. Now today, I think what a precious gift that was. Because my patient is sacred to me. It's personal to me. Even when I don't uh, uh, use it every day, just to look over and glance and see my my book that has my particular prayers that I do, the ways that I remind myself, and uh, I wouldn't think about parting with it. I'll find him, I'll make him one that he could use, but I wouldn't give him mine. But the time was so short, and he didn't have time for that. He just went home and he came back the next day and bought his. And he said you can use it until he passes, you know. And and it wasn't until recently that I even thought about it. So things come into our life, things go out of our life. We don't even think about it. But there comes a time in our life, just gradually, just naturally, when there's a shift and some important question pops up in our mind. And that's the question that you should think about. And don't just like ask the teacher about it. You think about it. And a lot of people will call me with a question, and I'm saying you need to figure that out. There was a time like I could give them a scripture and a verse, but I've learned to allow them, don't rob them of the capacity to know that they can solve their own problems. I'm talking about awakening to the Buddha nature inside. You need to have time for that. But because they want it now, and because I want to give it to them now, I rob them of their own true knowing. Now, I don't know whether it's thought that was in my head that's now in their head, so my thought is now their thought, or whether it came to me, it unpacked for me, and I understand this way. So this is when people start looking for another tradition. It's like I've learned all I can learn about that. Now I'll go to something else because the mind always wants to know something. The mind wants to learn something. And it becomes a very treacherous precipice to be on in our practice. When we think, I could just Google, I could just ask AI, and we get the answer. Then we start looking for something else. But I want to encourage you at this point. There's what we call the path of no more learning. But between the path of no more learning and the path of learning, there is a gap where what we have learned externally has to be dropped in the reservoir of our own mind. And we have to come to know what we know for ourselves. And we have to cross that divide. And when we cross that divide, what's on the other shore is the path of no more learning. And then we live in a kind of present moment that everything is self-revealing. To ask the question is for there to almost spontaneously come the answer of what to do, of how to do, when to do it, where to do it, why to do it, who to do it for. And before that can emerge, there has to be such a lessening of the sense of I am doing. When that is no longer arising, then there is just the doing. And I'll tell you, it looks like synchronicity. It looks like spontaneity. And those are words that we like to use to describe these, undescribable moments when everything seems to like just be in sync. But it's more than something just being in sync. It's when minds are deepening in such a way that the aspects of I-ness cannot rise. And then the thought actually manifests as the action. So I hope you understood what I'm talking about today. I thought about, this has been a section of the teaching. I didn't come on Tuesday, and I felt bad that I didn't come. But it turns out I got at home what the lesson was for Tuesday. So I came all excited because I had some kind of experience, and I couldn't wait to, what was it, Tuesday? Yes.
Yeah, it was Tuesday.
Yeah. Was that yesterday?
Yes.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. Time thing.
Yeah, it's that time thing.
We got it bad now.
We really
That
do.
time thing.
So I'm at home having this experience, and you all are here reading about it. And I swear I didn't read it, and I couldn't wait to come and share it. And then somebody said, well, that's just what we studied, yesterday. Oh, I know what it was. I saw you yesterday. But that after because it was Bill's birthday. And I was like, oh God, I don't feel good. But it's Bill's birthday. And but all Bill has is us, So I had to get up and go out to, I said, no, I don't want to go, because all he's gonna want is chicken and a hamburger from Kentucky Fried. I said, I don't want to eat that. I'm not going. Some said, you gotta go. So I got up and went. And he decided he wanted vegetarian for his birthday. And he wanted to go to Flat Rock Bakery, and he got goat cheese and spinach pizza. Now I'm telling you, that's one of them you just wave your hand, to just see. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. And he'll come and he'll talk very, very focused. And he say, this Dharma is something, isn't it? He said, this is really some high level teaching. I mean, you just have to know Bill to know what I'm talking about. It has difficulty navigating ordinary life, but yet he has entered a Dharma stream. Mm-hmm. So I'd had every night I'm having some kind of dream, because this is answering my questions. I'm just sharing a little bit of it so that you can feel free to ask your own questions, bombastic ones. It doesn't matter. But I was asking a question. And so I've been having dreams that kind of answer the question for me. And because it's so wonderful, I'd rather be sleeping 24 hours a day than interacting. That's kind of like getting attached to something, so I have to work on it. The minute I get home, I'm in the bed, until I have to come back here the next day. 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, because I'm discovering some things in those spaces. But the time will come that I don't have to be that focused for them. But right now, I do, you know. Um, and I know that by the answer that came this morning. So I've been having certain kinds of dreams. But one night, 2 nights ago, I had a dream. It doesn't matter what the dream was, but I had a dream, and I had to go to the bathroom. So having to pee woke me up. Okay, so I go to get up. I don't know where to go. I'm not familiar with this room. I'm like, where am I? I'm definitely awake. I'm on my feet, and I'm thinking, where am I, and how do I just where am I? Let's just answer that question for me. And I didn't know, but the urgency was there. So I'm making my way out of the room looking for the bathroom. And I found the bathroom, but I'm still wondering, where am I? I mean, where am I? I didn't know where I was. So then I head out and I walk down the hall with short 4 steps, and that's the hall. And then there's the living room, and there's the kitchen. None of this is familiar to me. And I go, oh, holy moly, I'm trapped in a dream or something there. Like I just can't get clear enough to know where I am. And I said, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll go back to bed and lay down and finish the dream. So I went back to my bedroom and laid down, and I finished the dream. The next time I woke up, oh no, so I finished before I finished the dream, I laid back down and I just laid there. I said, I'm not getting scared. You know, this is this is just the mind. And I've been working at loosening the mind from being fixed on things, right? The fixation of the mind. And so maybe, I don't know, I'll just lay here until I'll either fall back asleep or wake up. And I glanced at the clock to see what time it was. And then finally, very, very gradually, I came back and suddenly I knew where I was. I was in a hermitage in my bed where I've lived for 20 years or whatever, however long it's been. And everything was back and everything was normal. I looked at the clock, 15 minutes had passed. So that was about 20 minutes that, expired between the time I woke from the dream and finding, and then woke back to this reality. And then I was fine. Then I went on back to sleep and I had another dream. I woke up in the morning and everything was good. So I was like pondering, what is that? Now I had just taken a test on a parapsychology study the night before at at Duke University. They were asking questions about participating in a dream study, and they asked the question, how often do you like devolve slowly into a dream? And I put never. I just start dreaming whenever I start dreaming. So I don't like I'm gonna dream now. I just it's just like when I'm dreaming. And then it said, how often after you wake up are you still in that dream state and not fully back to reality? I put never, you know. That very night. I said, what are they talking about? When you wake up, you wake up, you know? And then so now I know what that is. I know what question they're asking, and I know what that is. So I'm forever uh, aware of some state of reality that it ain't something I read about in a book, but I have actually experienced it. Yeah, so that's nothing. I just put that in my wheelhouse, you know. And it helps me to know something about the elusiveness of time. And it starts to shift or tear down my sense of this concrete phenomenal world of being all that there is, all of the states that the mind can enter, all of the places that I can be, maybe simultaneously, that there is here and here is there. My mind is expanding in this way so that I'm not so tightly attached. Well, I've never been that attached to time, I admit that. But I'm not so tightly attached or fixed on things as I was before. So the suffering that I have held is not so strong. So I can be here or not be here. I can have something or not have it. I can do something that's enjoyable and not feel guilty. I can not do something and be okay with that. There's a natural flow or rhythm to life that is taking over, is what I'm saying. And it brings such a santi, such a peace, such a ease that life becomes a wonder and not a chore, not a task. And it lifts from us our sense of not being sufficient. It also lifts from us our sense of uh, um, arrogance. It lifts from us our troublesome nature to have to fix things. It takes away from us our need to be in everything or to instigate everything or to complete everything or be the one who knows or all of those weights that we experience due to dukkha start to fall away. And life takes on a different quality. And you can handle every bit of bad news you hear and every bit of good news you hear. It's just news. And you find yourself stabilizing in a way that you never could using somebody's method. Method is only as good as it works for you. So we don't have to grasp around anything. Buddha Master said we even have to let go of the Dharma. So we become perplexed, like how do you let go of the Dharma? It's being open to actually experiencing it, not just knowing about it and telling about it, but being willing to fully experience it. I'm hoping that maybe that will be our aspiration coming up this week, to know things as they really are, to be able to be with whatever arises, to tamp down our requirements for the moment, to back away from our insistence upon regulating life. It's only by surrendering that impulse that we will truly enter into it. Think about what that means, just in light of your own life. Right now, I'm learning a lot through some kind of dream yoga. I'm not going to call it anything, but maybe I am so opinionated, or maybe I am so it's been a long time. It's not so good to not to have anyone that you have to answer to. We call it freedom, but I'm not sure it's really a freedom. Because people that we have to answer to provide guardrails for us. So we have to really be willing to be accountable to one another, which can be a scary thought, but it's part of the process. Being accountable to one another means that someone can come up to me and share something with me. If they thought about, should they say it? Are they the one to say it? I'm just playing. Cause y'all so serious. About whether they should say it, should they say it right now? And are they the one to say it? And if you think yes to all those, then you can come and you can say it to me, because you're gonna be able to handle my response. No, I'm just kidding. But we should be able, but we should be able to like delight, I'm saying, in the suggestions of others, because they know your true heart. And they know you're struggling to try to get somewhere with something, to penetrate some kind of understanding that will cause you to not suffer, or keep you from causing other people to suffer. And when they give you that, because obviously it didn't come up in your mind, to be able to receive that and to ponder it. And after a while, this won't be uncomfortable. It won't be difficult. We will look forward to it. It was like, thank you, you are absolutely right, and right then our liberation comes. But if we are afraid to do that, then it takes us a little longer, to recognize. And this is the great preciousness of having a Sangha and being mutually accountable to one another. It's a place where we learn to loosen our individualism until we become a one mind, all moving on the same trajectory, thinking the best of each other, not wanting to get somebody told, but identifying with their suffering. So when a bodhisattva thinks, he doesn't think they're suffering, I'll go save them. He actually experiences, your suffering is my suffering. And a bodhisattva succors the suffering within themselves in their approach. And by virtue of them releasing, neutralizing and releasing that suffering, you benefit. The suffering can be neutralized and released in you. The thought becomes the action. So last night, I had a dream, and one of the questions on that survey was, can you change what's happening in your dream? Yes, no, and why do you think that is? I checked, no, I don't change things. I am trying to, I'm like watching them, I'm not trying to manipulate them. I'm like just watching them, and trying to see what that means to me, you know. And that was it. So last night, then I have a dream. And in this dream, it does its play out, and I'm a protector, and I have to kill somebody, and I kill them. But within the context of this dream, I understand that I did, I won't say I did them a favor, I helped them satisfy a, a karmic event that had already been set in motion. So now that's done with, and they can move on, on with their lives, move on, because this has been satisfied. And in that sense, then the dichotomy of good and bad was not there. It was no more than an action that was karmically called for, that the time had ripened, and it was handled, and now they're free of that. That's it. And so it was an interesting dream, and I'm working with this so that ultimately I will have that mind of equality, that mind that's not constantly judging good and bad, right and wrong, in and out, up and down, just a mind of equality. And so this voice says to me, like, can you change that? I'm like, no, I'm not trying to change it. I'm just dreaming, you know. So then the section of Buddha Master's teaching, when he talks about when you get into certain states, that instead of your mind reacting to what's happening in the material world, that your mind will change the structure of appearances. So it'll no longer be a reaction to what's happening, but you can cause something to happen based on your state of mind. Now, that's why we have to have patience, because if that was happening in my life right now based on my state of mind, people be all broke up around me because my state of mind does not have that degree of purity that me having that would be of a benefit to them, right? So, um, so, so then, this, it's like telepathy, like in your head. And so it says, so this big wheel came up and it's spinning numbers. And it says, stop the numbers. I'm like, I can't stop the numbers. It said, stop the numbers. I said, okay. And just as soon as I said, okay, the numbers stop. Then it says, speed the numbers up. And I say, okay, and the numbers start speeding. Stop the numbers, and I stop the numbers. Speed the numbers up, and I speed the numbers. And then, bing, I was wide awake. And that was the end of it. Now, I know it's a meaningless dream to you, but it's a meaningful dream to me, because I'm understanding more deeply how our thoughts really outpicture and affect the world. So when I think that I can make a difference in the world by the purity of my thoughts, I haven't understood the nature of reality. I don't always have to be doing something out here. The most powerful force is the mastery of the ordinary mind. So it gives me something to ponder and to think about, to be more careful about what I think about and how I think about things. So this life becomes different. It's, I don't know how to express it to you, but it brings back the joy of discovery and the marvelousness, of growing into the fullness of the measure of the stature of our own Buddha nature. And so in the beginning, I was looking for a savior. But what a savior does is he helps you to know yourself. I think that's all I want to share today. Somebody will close.
We dedicate the merit of our time together today in learning and reflection to all beings in the Dharma sphere. May all beings recognize their own intrinsic nature and be liberated from all suffering.
The three samsaric realms, the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. I've never really known what that meant. I knew how to describe them in the ways that the books tell me. But now I'm actually, experiencing. They're still desires. That's why the Buddha Master says, whatever you see, you conjured it up in your own mind. Don't think that you've gone to some Buddha land. You just conjured it up in your own mind. So you see, this is just me conjuring up stuff in my own mind as I'm untying the knots. But now I have an internal compass and an internal reference for those, for those three spheres. Yes.